Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to today's Power Performance Lunch webcast delivered by NetSphere Strategies. My name is Abby Miller, and I'm the Digital Marketing Manager here. Before we get started, I'd like to take a few moments to make some introductions. For those who aren't familiar with NetSphere Strategies, we are a boutique e-commerce firm located just outside of Chicago. Our core competencies include consulting, development, and ongoing support services. Our team includes experienced and certified developers, integrators, and UI/UX architects who design and deploy successful online stores for our clients. The presenter for today's webcast is Steve Moen, NetSphere Strategies CEO and co-founder. Steve works with our clients to help formulate and execute e-commerce strategies built to enhance their competitiveness and increase their revenue dollars.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to attend. The purpose of this 30-minute webinar is to provide a high-level overview to address poor page performance and what tools are available to assist you in this effort. So let's review the first two bullets on the slide before us. Most of you would say these statistics are relevant today. However, these metrics were taken in the summer of 2009 by a Forrester study by eCommerce. Today's statistics are different. Only 5% of the top 500 US e-commerce sites today load in 3 seconds, none load in 2 seconds, and 50% take 10 seconds or longer to load. And this is according to a Radware study conducted in the winter of 2014 on page performance for the top 500 US e-commerce sites. So why the discrepancy in expectations? Well, back in January 2009, the average web page was 500 kilobytes in size, 3 times smaller than it is today. There are 50% more requests now to load images, JavaScript, CSS files than in 2009. So it's natural pages would load more quickly back then due to their lighter footprint. I bring this to your attention because you need to be aware when metrics are taken and are they realistic in today's environment? Are we truly comparing apples to apples? So what does this tell us? The trend is that pages are becoming more complex, page size is larger, there are more components to fill out a page, and as a result, pages take longer to load. In regards to this slide where it talks about 1 second delay in page load times, what are the behavioral consequences of poor page performance? Well, if you look at bullet 1, fewer page views occurs. This indicates shoppers are becoming less engaged with your site. As a result, Google Analytics metrics like page visits and average time on site begin to drop. Bullet 2, decrease in customer satisfaction. You can see that in the Google Analytics by looking at the number for percentage of repeat visitors begin to slide. And also, if you're on an e-commerce site, poor page performance is not a good sign since repeat customers are your most valuable players and are the most profitable customers. So a loss in repeat visitors definitely hits the bottom line for e-commerce sites. And the last one is conversion loss. There is a direct correlation between revenue and slow page performance. And the next slide will provide support for this statement. Now, many of you probably have seen something similar to this. And again, one of the things I want to list here is that don't take the statistics and metrics that you see here at face value. The point here is to look at the trends. And that is the point that I'm trying to make here. If you look at an e-commerce site, if it's generated 100K of revenue per day, a 1 second page loss or 1 second page delay, if you look at it annually, that would cost the company in lost revenue sales $2.5 million. With that kind of revenue per day, you're looking at a site that's generating around 37 million annually online revenues. If your site isn't that large, take a tenth of that. Say it's 3.6 million. And if you're generating $10,000 per day and a 1 second page delay, That would be $700 a day. Multiply that by the number of days in a year, which is 365, and you get about $250,000 loss in revenue. As you can plainly see, page performance has a direct path to the bottom line profitability of your website. So let's talk a little bit about analytics. Let's sum up what we learned so far about slow page performance. Consumers are impatient. Give them a slow website, they go to your competitors. Bad user experience, shoppers are less likely to come back and buy from you again. And what type of damage is done? Less sales, client retention slides, your brand is tarnished. So the question becomes, can you catch the first warning signs of poor page performance and do something about it before your customers can? And of course, the answer to that is yes. So what needs to be done for this to happen? First and foremost, you need to deploy an analytics package. This will be your early warning system to let you know when your site is not performing. Use it daily. Track those key performance indicators that are important to your business, whether that is average order value, daily orders, conversion rate, visitor traffic, or repeat customers. And another point is pay attention to trends. Keep your historical data. It's good to look at comparisons from last month, last quarter, and last year. Tracking analytics is just as important as tracking revenue and cash flow on a monthly, quarterly, and annual basis. Make this one of your mandates that you do on a weekly, monthly basis, tracking information on your website. And when you track online behaviors, use that feedback to make the necessary course your regular course adjustments before small problems become big problems. When we look at performance tuning, there's three different areas that we can look at. There's front-end tuning, back-end tuning, and network tuning. Generally speaking, time spent on front-end tuning followed by network tuning will drive the biggest bang for the buck for page load performance improvements. And just to give you just a quick summary of what these definitions mean, front-end tuning it's about optimization at the front end is focused on getting files downloaded to the client so those resources can be collected and rendered as a page, as a web page. We're talking about images, HTML code, JavaScript, CSS files. Those are the components or the resources that need to get downloaded quickly. Back-end tuning, that's when the front-end applications make requests to the back-end applications like a database to pull all the dynamic content together for a page to be rendered at the client. This could be product images, product descriptions, pricing, things of that nature. As a rule of thumb, 20% of page load time is spent on the back end, and the other 80% is spent on the front end. And from a network tuning perspective, it's all about, network tuning is all about caching web content at the network edge versus at the client or the server location. Latency time is reduced by caching the content closer to the end user issuing the request, and that's where your gain in response time happens. So let's talk a little bit about front-end tuning. What to look for? Well, today pages are bigger, meaning more HTTP requests are needed to download the necessary images and files to fully render a web page. In 2014, an average web page was 99 resources to download versus 64 in 2009, a 50% increase. In other words, the more HTTP requests, the longer it takes to render a page. Pages are also becoming heavier. In 2004, when this study was taken, page weight was about almost 1.5 megabytes in size. In 2009, it was a half a megabyte in size. So just in a matter of 4 to 5 years, there's been a 300% increase in the size of the page. And also, pages are taking a bit longer to be interactive. What I mean by that, there's a concept called time to interact. And the definition of that is how long does it take for the primary content of a page to load and become usable. This doesn't necessarily imply the page is fully loaded. It just means that you can interact with that page, whether you click on a link, fill out a form, that type of thing. And the most recent statistics state it takes 5 seconds for a page to become interactive. Well, let's look at this. 5 seconds is still a far cry short of the 3 seconds we talked about earlier, the point at which majority of online shoppers say they'll abandon a page. When a user abandons a site after 3 seconds, what does that really mean? It's really never defined in some of the surveys that you read. Does it mean that the page was partially loaded but not interactive? Or does it mean the hourglass was spinning and the page was blank? And the point behind all this is that um, if you look at today's metrics, load times are slower than ever. When you look at the top 500 e-commerce sites, it takes about 9.3 seconds to download a page versus 7.7 seconds just 1 year ago. That's about a 25-26% performance decrease. And only 5% of the top e-commerce sites load in 3 seconds, none load in 2 seconds, and 50% of the top 500 e-commerce sites in the United States takes 10 seconds or longer to render a page, fully render a page. So what are some of the things that you can do to resolve some of these issues? Well, one of them would be reduce the number of HTTP requests. What you can do there is optimize images, combine HTML and CSS files, combine JavaScript files if applicable. And there is a test that you can run. It's called Load Impact. If you go to loadimpact.com, we'll talk about that in a few more slides about some of the free tools that are available. That will show you how the distribution of what content is being downloaded and how long does that content take to download to the client site for rendering. A couple other things that you can do is compress images, whether you minify the CSS, HTML, and JavaScript so you can remove comments and some of the white spaces, or you can use progressive versus baseline JPEGs to improve actual load times. And those are some of the things that can be done from a front-end tuning perspective. The back-end tuning, well, for this webinar, we'll address just one aspect of back-office operations, and that's the e-commerce catalog database. When performance tools indicate there is a lag time fetching data from the catalog database, this usually is the result of poor database maintenance or a database not properly configured or tuned for the workload at hand. And so what are some of the telltale signs of a database degradation? Well, user requests are sluggish when a database is under heavy transaction load, or the database is slowly degrading in performance, not because of heavy application load, but because there's not enough memory or CPU resources that have been allocated to meet the demands that the site is currently encountering. So what can we do about this? Well, to determine if the database has performance degradation issues, you need to have access to a DB administrator to help diagnose those problems. One of the things that you could do is review the error and log files for the database and the application server. Look for specific keywords, errors that indicate a particular resource has reached its threshold. You might look for keywords like deadlock or deadlock conditions detected, or maximum number of threads or connections has been reached. Those are some of the keywords or phrases that can be used to filter the log and error files. Another one would be when sites don't schedule, when companies don't schedule database maintenance on a consistent basis, the database becomes slow and bloated with months or years of stale data. And that would be expired guest users, stale orders, expired coupons, promotions, you name it. If you haven't deleted it, it still resides there. And that's going to cause serious performance problems. If the database hasn't been compacted, reorganized, and tuned for some time, it becomes fragmented and performance degradation occurs, resulting in slow response time to user inquiries or HTTP requests itself. So what can be done when a database performance is identified as a problem? The problem is typically associated with poor database maintenance. The simple solution for that is to keep the database lean, tables and indexes compact, and that will give you the response times that you're looking for. And the last one of the three categories we want to talk about today is network tuning. Um, there's something called a content delivery network called a CDN. And what that is, it's a collection of web servers that replicates content from the origin server to cache servers, which are scattered across various geographic locations throughout the World Wide Web. So if you as a company cache your content with a vendor CDN, this reduces the round trip time to deliver content, and data is served up from the server nearest the end user. In other words, what you're doing is you're removing the propagation delay associated with downloading data from geographic locations that are quite far away from where the data originated at. If a CDN is not used, all these user requests for content will be processed on the server where the web store resides. This requires the server to allocate memory and CPU cycles to process those content requests, effectively slowing down the overall response time to user inquiries. Typically, 60% of the delay in page performance is linked to downloading static page components, and that is a problem that the CDN resolves. So how do we put all this together? There's something called a performance assessment. And a performance assessment will address the three performance optimization categories discussed in this webinar to determine where performance inhibitors are taking place. The output of an assessment is a written report called the deliverable, which we will address in just a few minutes. The assessment portion of the deliverable typically takes about 1 week to collect the data. A second week is used to analyze the data and generate the final deliverable. If more than web store is evaluated or includes a clustered environment or a disaster recovery environment, then additional time is required for the assessment. The deliverable is emailed to the client, and a conference call is set up to review the contents of the deliverable with the client. Client has the option then to choose to make the changes themselves or choose an e-commerce solution provider to implement the plan spelled out in the deliverable. And if you choose to do some of this yourself, there's some great tools out there. Besides the three tools that we've mentioned, probably most of you have used the web page test, but we have 6 or 7 other tools that we have used in the past. And if you would like to have access to those, just let us know and we'll email that information to you. But there's quite a few tools out there that will help you optimize or do your front-end optimization along with your back-end and network. And finally, the takeaways from a formal assessment include what that includes is identifies a list of performance problems, prioritizes a list of problems identified, provides a solution to fix each of the problems identified. Client will have enough information to implement their recommendations themselves, or they can select an e-commerce solution provider of their choosing who has the skill sets to implement the outlined recommendations in the deliverable. And the lasting benefits derived from an assessment once corrective actions are taken are user confidence is restored, visitor traffic begins to climb, no more staring at a blank screen for several seconds, and online revenues begin to fall in place with your forecast.